Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm joined by the phenomenal Alex Wong of Sportsnet, the author of the soon-to-be bestseller Prehistoric. Thanks so much for taking the time and coming on. And how are you? How's the book tour? How's U of T selling out a packed crowd? How's that been for you?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, first of all. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a long time, and I just like to create a mystique around me. And part of that is, I guess, just saying no to people. No, but no, it's been cool. The book came out in late October. I guess it's been like 3 weeks now, almost a month. And um just for anybody that's trying to get the book, I know right now it's sold out on Amazon and Indigo Online, which it's good news for me, but I know it's tough for some people who like pre-ordered. There's still copies in stores at Indigo locations right now, and working towards, obviously, with the publisher to kind of restock that at all places. We want to make sure this is a cool, I think, Christmas gift for people. But yeah, the reception's been amazing. Just even doing kind of podcasts, interviews like this, and just hearing from people one on one. It's been really cool hearing from like Raptors fans, both like younger and older, kind of provide that feedback. And it really resonated with a lot of stories that are in there, which has been like the best part of this experience.
And how did you kind of come up with the idea of writing the book? Just tell us a little bit about kind of I know I know you've talked about how much of a process it was for you. Not an easy thing to kind of put together, but just kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit about it.
Yeah, for sure. This is a project that actually had come to my mind after the Raptors won the championship in 2019. And I just there was actually some demand at the time. I work with an agent, and publishers had wanted a book about the championship season. But the problem was, like, a lot of times how these, like, I guess, like, how the book market works is like these publishers will want something because it's being talked about at the moment. Like, the Raptors are really hot coming off the championship, but they want to like really capitalize on that. So then, like, they'll tell you that they want the book in like 6 months time. And it was like kind of difficult for me because, like, I've always with my work, specifically, like, I've always really valued kind of the reporting and the interviewing aspect of
Hmm.
things, instead of just like putting something together that'd be quick. So I kind of passed on some of those opportunities. There still hasn't been, I guess, like a definitive book about the championship to come to market. I actually tried to pitch Masai this on Media Day when we were talking kind of just like off to the side, but he told
Yeah.
me there's no money in books. So I will revisit that next time I see him. He's not wrong. But so that kind of happens, and then kind of a Raptors book actually goes to market, and that's Doug Smith's
Yeah.
We the North. And Doug's talked about this, publicly. Like, I actually helped him work on that project. So like I had a lot of visibility into what that project was about. And Doug decided to really cover kind of the 25 years at the time of the franchise. So the idea that I had in my head in terms of diving into the early years, telling the origin story was still there. Like, it still wasn't
Hmm.
told. So after Doug's book comes out, that's when I kind of finally pitched my idea. And this is something that I've always wanted to do for a long time. Like, even before the championship, like, I was always just felt like a lot of people's kind of history and like memories of the Raptors really starts with Vince Carter. And I think a lot of times when people talk in the US as well, like, their memories of the Raptors or how they choose to remember the franchise starts with the arrival of Vince Carter. And it's like, yeah, there were a lot of kind of, winning days, a lot of great times in those early years of the Raptors. But, that was never kind of the story that interested me. It was about really telling the story of like pro basketball coming back to Canada and like the modern day age. Like, the Toronto Huskies was here for like 1 year,
Yeah.
I think, in
Yeah.
like 46. So it's like, what was that like? And like, what was it like to just build an expansion franchise from the ground up? I feel like a lot of teams like the Celtics, the Lakers, the Knicks, like, their history, right?
Hmm.
The Showtime Lakers, like, the Celtics from like the 60s, from the 70s, like, Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, Kareem. And certainly the Raptors aren't of the same stature as a franchise, but it's like very few people, I feel like, that follow the Raptors, or especially the younger fans, like, know the history of like the
Hmm.
team, except for like a few couple things. So like all of those things were kind of motivations for me to work on this project.
Where did like the like it's I reading the book, what I found so fascinating is just how the ownership process came to be with John Bitove, and then him leaving like abruptly just because of a clause in the contract. But just with when you were doing the research, what were you learning new things about kind of the history of it and obviously the players? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know, that was one of the things for me is like diving into any project. It's like you have a baseline knowledge of these things. But like a lot of the stuff I learned in the very beginning just through research. You know, I actually studied like the Toronto Star, like sports section archive. Spent a few months on that just to like pull newspaper clips, pull quotes, pull names of people that I really wanted to talk to. And then kind of diving in and starting to interview people. And like as I was interviewing people, like I started learning about so many things. Like I learned about the first season ticket drive that ended up
Hmm.
being in the one of the early chapters. Like one of the things I ever only knew was that like Shoppers Drug Mart had been a partner with the Raptors and they had bought up a bunch of tickets. Because I remember growing up, you could go to Shoppers and like buy Raptors tickets. But what I didn't realize was like this like ragtag group of guys, like group of guys and girls who were like in their early 20s, getting hired away from their jobs to basically like cold call people around the city to try to sell tickets. And most of them ended up having careers, which a lot of them still have today, working in sports, which is kind of wild to me. And so like little tidbits like that, it would always start with like a single question. It's like, oh, like what was the season ticket drive like? And then like finding out like stories of like five people, or like
Hmm.
you know, opening night, it's like you always see the clips like the bare naked ladies like singing the anthem, or the raptor coming out of the dinosaur egg, but it's like you actually talk to a member of the bare naked ladies, you actually talk to the raptor, and you actually talk to the game ops person who like prints out the game day script and like organizes the whole game, and you start finding out a lot of these details that you didn't know before. So like definitely like during this whole process, like there was so much that I was able to learn just from like research and talking to all these people.
How easy or difficult was it to connect with all those people that you wanted to? I think you had 12 of 19 players from the 95-96 team. Um, like obviously you've been covering this team for so long, you have connections, and maybe you can also talk about on the phone or on Zoom with Samuel Jackson for a little bit for the story.
Yeah, for sure. You know, ended up interviewing around 140 people, I think, for the story, for the book, and like, you know, that was one of the advantages I had. Like, it wasn't actually as difficult, as like other projects that I've worked on. In that, like, I had a really good relationship with John Bitove Jr. So, like, anytime I wanted to reach out to John and like have him introduce me to like, people who worked in the front office, people who worked in different departments at the time, like, he was super helpful. Like he helped me connect with even it's just like random people around the city. Like, you know, he told me that Paul Beeston was a huge mentor to him because like Beeston was like with the
Mhm.
Blue Jays at the time. So like he connected with Paul Beeston, and like I was able to chat with him. And you know, the person that really was super helpful with this was like Elaine Kwan, who's in the book as like a member of the community relations department. Like she started out with the franchise, like working on the season tickets. Um, and like she actually still keeps in touch with a lot of the players, a lot of the front office. She organizes reunions for them. Like you know, I was gracious enough to be invited this summer to a reunion that they had where some of the players, including like Tracy Murray, AC Earl, even Marcus Camby from the second year, they all came to Real Sports. John Bitove was there, Isaiah Thomas
Wow.
was there. So like Elaine was just a super help. It's like when I had trouble, you know, one of the people I had problem kind of getting a hold of was Damon Stoudemire, because he was coaching the Boston Celtics at the time, like as an assistant,
Mhm.
when I was working on my book. So like in season, it was impossible to track him down. But Elaine helped me coordinate just like doing a weekly Zoom with Damon like last summer. So we were
Wow.
able to have like six, seven, eight conversations, like, you know, have a conversation every week. And he was able to fill out a lot of the book for me. And obviously he was gracious enough to do the forward as well. And the Samuel L. Jackson interview came out of the Elaine connection as well, because like Elaine and Sam actually have kept in touch. You know, you've read the book. Like for people who read the book, they'll know a little bit about that connection there. But like, yeah, she was able to reach out to Sam, and you know, Sam was able to kind of make some time to chat. And it was funny too, like, you know, you talk about the UFT book launch, which I had, which was incredible. Like, Elaine was actually trying to see if Sam would fly
Wow.
in and like be a guest. So like,
Wow.
We were charging like what? We were charging like $10 a ticket for that evening. Like, imagine if you pay $10 and then like Samuel Jackson just showed up. I mean, they gave me personal security that night because I guess like we had like a book signing line. Like, I mean, I think if Samuel Jackson came, they'd have to like really ramp up the security because people I feel like people would just like lose their minds.
Yeah, you'd be his security guard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what would actually happen.
um and I know Drake's people reached out to you. Like, do they sign off on the email being like OVO forever? Like, what what was that like?
But wait, how'd you find out about this?
I
Where did I
listened to
reveal this?
I listened to the banter pod. I think that's
Oh
how.
yeah, yeah, okay, okay. That's where I reveal all my secrets. No, it's actually it's funny because it's just like through a friend. I was able to. A friend told me, a friend who talked to Drake and then his representatives, like, they actually had expressed interest in checking out the book. So I was told like kind of secondhand. And then I was told, hey, would you be down to like sign a few copies? You can drop it off to us and we'll drop it off to him. And I was like, yes,
Mm.
definitely. So it's kind of funny because like I think the same day we were just like, I don't know, we were making fun of Drake, but sometimes we'll make a joke on air about him being a global ambassador and stuff. And I feel like we did crack one of those jokes the same day that I found out. So since then, I've been a huge supporter of the boy. I haven't said anything bad about him on air, but he's got 6 weeks left to post my book on his IG
Yeah,
story. Just
because
have it in the back. Just have it in the background, my brother. That's all I ask.
yeah, I think maybe you'd be even more out of stock if Drake put it on his IG and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
like,
please, please, Drake. Like my future is like literally in your hands right now. You just need to grab that book, like wherever it is, in the gym and on your coffee table. Like just please, please just include it in the background of a story. Like you could change my life.
you can be like one of the other like many rappers that have been helped by Drake's fame and success. You, Future, and Alex.
Yeah, this is all I want, man.
Yeah,
Please, please,
it's
Drake.
the
I'm
future, but
begging you.
it's the
Yeah.
future, but we're going prehistoric, baby. So, talk a little bit about like deciding on a name of a book because I know that wasn't really. I think it took a while for you to come up with one, and obviously you put so much work into it. How did that come about? Because I really like the name of the.
Yeah, no, I fell in love with the name, but yeah, the process took you start working on the book, you don't really think about the name because like you don't really have to think about it, I guess, at the very beginning because it's like a multi-year process to put together the book and you want to come up with it early on so then you can start laying the groundwork of like doing the cover art which shouts to Drake Seal for that but like yeah I struggled I've always struggled like I don't know if it's like this for you. It's like, when I write a lot of stories, when I work with places and stuff, editors will always be like, oh, do you have any suggestions for like a headline and stuff like that? And I'm always like, no, absolutely not. Like I just write the stories, like you
Yeah,
guys decide. But obviously for a book, you got to take a little ownership of that because like I've seen a lot of just like bad headlines that come out on my stories, and I'm like, damn, like maybe I should have chimed in. But like, yeah, it was tough. Like I wanted something that was catchy. The last time, the last book that I published was about kind of the history
hmm
of like basketball and magazines. So like cover story was like something that like came right to me. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is perfect. Whereas this time it was like, man, I was really struggling and like I've been trying to find the Google Doc where I like brainstorm the names. It might have just been on a notes app that I can't find anymore, but it's like as I was writing, like I was like, oh, I needed something that would reference like I don't know, like dinosaurs or like the kind of
yeah.
that era, something like that. And then so
Mhm.
like I think I've told this, but it's like I think Jurassic Start was one of them. Like
Yeah.
even saying that makes me cringe. Like that was terrible. That was actually cribbed off. I did a Vice story a long time ago. This was when the bench mob was happening
Yep.
with like Fred Pascal and CJ, and like
hmm
they actually gave me a cool headline. It was Jurassic Spark.
Ah,
So like I kind of ripped that and was like, oh, how can I do it? But then like I pictured myself promoting my book or like tell or people saying the title of my book, and I was like, oh my God, Jurassic Start. Like if I gotta hear that, like right away. That's the thing with like titles. Like I don't have a kid, but I feel like it's like a baby's
maybe.
name. It's like when you hear it, like right away if it's good or bad. So like I'm still trying to think of the other names that I came up with. Like I think they were so bad that maybe I didn't even write them down. But like
Huh.
I was going through an article then as I was mentioning, I was doing that research. And then like there was a newspaper article about the Raptors. They were describing the team's logo, a name, and they were like, "Oh, dinosaurs have been famous since like the prehistoric era or something." And
Yeah.
then I was like, "Oh, prehistoric is perfect." Like obviously the dinosaur age reference, but also obviously the whole idea of them, the franchise being in that kind of beginning, that prehistoric
Hmm.
age. So like once I landed on that, I was like, oh damn, this is perfect. And everything just kind of lined up from there.
Yeah. Well, what were like, because obviously you lived through that team. What do you remember about the team in 95, 96?
Yeah, I remember like going with my parents to like the Sears department store because that's when they put out the merch. And like I remember like we could only afford, I guess my mom only bought us like one t-shirt at the time. So like I think I shared it with my sister, or maybe
Uh-huh.
she was the one that got to own it, because like I've gone back and seen photos of me wearing a Raptors tee, but then her as well. And I don't think we own two of those, but like I remember the merch, I remember that like it wasn't cool to wear the Raptors logo, like jackets, t-shirts, and that at school. Like I remember turning on the games and like watching it on like CTV, like the new VR, which is like a very local station at the time. So like I remember wearing like watching games here and there. Um so like I mean I was 11 at the time, so it wasn't like I don't think I was following the team like religiously. I
Hmm.
remember reading the newspaper a lot because like that's just something that like I loved to do back in the day. Kind of just opening up the sports section because we subscribed to the paper. So like doing that and like reading about the team, like studying the box scores and stuff, following a little bit of like David Stoudemire as he won like rookie of the year. So it was very like I guess it was very kind of like surface level in terms of just like
Hmm.
knowing the team existed, following the team because I like basketball. But at that time, I was still a bigger fan of like following what Jordan and the Bulls were doing. Like I was a huge
Okay.
fan of like Shaq and Penny and the Magic. So like the Raptors were like on the map, but it wasn't until I would say like later on in my life, as I grew older and like as the Raptors grew more popular, that like they became a way bigger part of my life.
Yeah. And with that, like I know you have an interesting career path to where you are today. You were at Ernst and Young, I believe, and a CPA and all that. Just tell us about a little bit your career path to where you are today.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I went to school, I think like a lot of kids, like I just didn't really think too deeply or critically about like what I wanted to do. Like I guess I was just raised in an environment to think about like, oh, what's the easiest path to have a stable income when you come out of school. So like for me, like naturally all my friends all gravitated towards just like business, whether it was getting into finance, accounting, marketing, maybe become a lawyer, things like that. So that was just the path that I chose. So like I went to school, got my BBA, and then studied to get my CPA license. Was able to land at one of those big four accounting firms, and then kind of worked in that industry for like around a decade. Until I kind of just like I was growing like just increasingly more miserable. Like I was never really
Hmm.
motivated at my job. It was just like kind of a means to an end type. You're just making money, taking care of yourself, but like a huge part of like I guess whatever you want to call it, like the creative part of me or whatever, just like wasn't being fulfilled. So, I finally was like actually pushed to make my decision when I was like moved around a few jobs in that industry. And I was laid off on my last job because like my there was a merger, my role was eliminated. And
Wow.
like I might have never like even made the move to transition to this industry if like that didn't happen to me. So that was kind of the push that I needed. And I actually moved to New York for 4 years, and that's when I started out my freelance career. And then I ended up coming back here in like 2016. And obviously like back in Toronto now, like the focus has been on like Raptors coverage, up
Hmm.
to what I'm doing today. So that's kind of like the short story version of like how I was able to kind of move from that career to what I'm doing today.
What do you love about writing, and maybe what's a little bit of your process? I know you really like feature stories, kind of culture stories. I think about the one on Jeremy Lin from
Mhm.
when they won the championship in 2019. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of a lot of kind of feature writing and stuff is just generated off like what your self-interests are. And I've always, basketball was kind of the entryway I look at it for me in terms of getting into writing. And certainly like I know people associate me with, basketball and obviously the Raptors and like even the books that I've written, like, with Cover Story and Prehistoric, are very like basketball focused. But, process wise, it's always kind of, the hardest part I always tell, people who reach out about writing is like just the idea generation part of it, right?
Mm,
Because like it's very difficult to, especially as a freelancer, which I've worked as for most of my career, to convince editors to let you write a story. Because like you have to pitch yourself, basically. You have to pitch yourself and pitch the idea. So like, when I used to write a lot more, like it was just I would always be jotting ideas down. Like I was reading a
mm,
lot. I was thinking a lot just of like ideas I've always wanted to do. And like I would like go for walks and like come up with a random idea, like, oh, thought of this wrestler that I want to write about, or oh,
yeah.
I'm noticing a trend. Like I remember, I did this like National Post feature on just like people playing solitaire and why
Huh.
there's so many people that are still playing solitaire after all these years. And it was literally because like I think I forgot where I flew to, but on a flight, like the person in front of me was like a older person, and like she was playing solitaire on like the whole flight. And then the next day I went on the subway and I saw this like younger person playing
Huh.
solitaire. And I found it so interesting in a world of like just availability of like apps. You could do anything. You could turn on your iPod, listen, not iPod, you could turn on your phone
Phone.
and like
Yeah.
listen to any podcast. Like you have access to everything, but there's still a subset of people who are still playing this like very basic game that I remember from
Yeah.
like my PC computer. So like I ended up just like reaching out to people and like crowdsourcing and finding like 4 or 5 people who like talked to me about their obsession with solitaire.
Yeah.
Some of it was to calm them down. Another person realized that like one of my friends like actually got into like a car accident and then like had to stay home and couldn't do anything because he was like had some symptoms, I think like concussion symptoms. So like he just brought out a deck of cards and started playing solitaire like with real cards.
Huh.
So like somehow that ended up being a story. So like it's just the curiosity of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's the curiosity of things, and it's a desire to tell the stories of people.
Yeah.
Like this is what I've told people about Prehistoric and even Cover Story and these books. It's like, yes, the premise is about the origin story of the Raptors, but it's really just about the people who came together and like built the Raptors from the ground up. Like the Raptors are just a canvas for telling the stories that I want to tell. So like with feature stories, with book pitches, the focus is always on satisfying my own curiosities and trusting that those curiosities will satisfy the curiosities of the readers.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's kind of like focusing on telling the stories of other people. Because like I just did a Toronto Star feature last week on my friend Andre, who's runs a local comic book store in Richmond Hill, and that story came about because Iman Vellani, who stars in the new Marvels movie, she plays Miss Marvel, grew up and went to the same high school as me
Oh,
in
really?
Unionville. Yeah, and she
Huh.
visited the same comic book store. Like we were obviously like I think 10 years apart,
Yeah.
20 years apart, whatever it is, but like she had written an essay earlier this year online talking about the importance of like having a local comic book store owner who's like welcoming you into the space. And she
Mm,
named Andre by name. And I hadn't been to that comic book store in like 15, 20 years when I read that essay. And I was like, damn, like that's Andre. Like she's probably talking about the same Andre that I
yeah.
knew. So I went in the store, I looked up the store, found out they were still open, talked to Andre, like reconnected with him, and then
Wow.
decided to just pitch this story. And I found out that like Iman had like kept in touch, like shouts out the store, which is called Heroes World. And when Iman wrote a Miss Marvel comic this year, like she had Andre in the comic book as
Wow.
the owner of Heroes World, like pitching a comic. So like it was this crazy story, and I was like, man, I got to tell this story. So I like pitched it to the Star, and then like they put it on the cover of their culture section like last Thursday. So it's like for better or worse, like my brain is always just like wired to think about like not like how to turn everyone into content, but it's like what are the stories that I want to tell and what are the stories that people are like interested in.
And with that, because obviously you know a lot of people know you for the Raptors show, and you and Will Lou, like you guys are really funny together. Is that something that was just natural? Like, do you find yourself like a quasi comedian of sorts? Like, would you describe yourself as that?
I've always disrespected my stand-up comedian friends. My friend like Enes Esmer, who's has done a lot of stand-up comedy, still does. Tom Henry, James Harden, and a lot of these guys, like I'm always like, man, I could do what you do. But like I say it half jokingly because like having watched a lot of stand up, been around some of these people, like obviously this is a whole craft. Like I've always explained that it's funny. It's easier to be funny in conversation than it
Hmm.
is when you're like stepping on stage, obviously. Having said that, yes, I do consider myself a quasi comedian. No, I
You.
think
Okay.
I think so much of it is just comes from, I've obviously built a very good chemistry with Will. Like we're close with each other, like off air. And like when you're able to have that kind of friendship, the comedy kind of just lends itself because like everybody
Mhm.
has their own kind of group, friend group, whether it's a group chat or individual friends. Like a comedy is just born out of, making fun of each other or
Yeah.
like feeling comfortable. And it's like, you don't get that with everybody. Like you could
Hmm.
be paired with someone to do a show where you don't really know that person that well. And it doesn't necessarily mean that show could be good or bad. Like it could be either way, but it's like if you don't know someone that well, you don't know their tendencies, you don't know how they live their life, like you're not able to kind of make those jokes because like
Yeah.
people might be sensitive or you just don't know them well enough to even have any of these jokes. So like, so much of what we do is just born out of that, but also born out of just I think bringing maybe kind of like a breath of fresh air to like how people talk about sports or how people cover basketball. And I think the way we work well, because like, Will kind of quote unquote kind of just takes it more seriously.
Yeah.
And I think Will thinks more kind of critically about the game from like an X's and O's perspective.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm more interested in kind of like just kind of big picture. Um, personality driven stuff, like you mentioned, like kind of the funny stuff that happens, and things of that nature. And like I think that kind of creates that chemistry, because we're both looking at it from kind of a different perspective. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it's like I don't think, the worst thing you can do is to kind of go out of your way when you're on a public platform, whether you're on YouTube, TV, or doing a podcast, go out of your way to be something that like you're not. And like
Hmm.
I've always, had that sense of humor. And it's not something that I ever feel like I'm forcing, like it's just how I am in conversation.
Hmm.
Sure, like we probably punch it up a little bit, like, when the cameras are on and stuff like that, but it's like it always feels natural, like kind of where we're coming from.
Yeah. And then how has it been with Blake in the fold this year, and you guys just sprouting knee how all of it all the time to
Yeah. No, but I think like, our show kind of format just kind of lends itself to kind of those moments where we're able to have fun and stuff. And like, Blake's obviously a treasure trove of knowledge. And in terms of like how he approaches the game too, I think he comes at it from like a different perspective. So like being able to kind of mesh that together, and having the 2 hour format, I think it's been great in terms of just like, we've been able to kind of get more guests on, the Dennis Schroder like weekly
yeah,
appearances and stuff like that. So like
awesome.
yeah, I think we're just kind of building on what we've done like the past couple of years.
What I always remark about you guys is also how you talk about your culture and being Chinese, kind of, and coming to Canada and first, second generation. But just for you, Alex, like what were the challenges coming up in Canada itself, but also in the sports media landscape as an Asian person, and just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think just like immigrating here when I was like 8 years old, I still remember going to like school for the first time. Like first day it was like grade 3. And I remember like my dad had, I guess, like put in my like Chinese name instead of the English name Alex that I chose. So then like I remember just like kids would like chuckle when like they were taking
Mm,
attendance at the start of the class because like my name wasn't like an English name, and stuff like that, just like kind of language barrier and stuff. But I think like socially and stuff, like I was able to kind of quickly adapt. You go to ESL, you learn the language, you find common interests with people like, through hip hop, through basketball, just through a lot of that stuff as kids. So that part was like okay. And like growing up in Markham as well, like I think I read in an article a couple of years ago, that's like the third highest like population of Asians amongst like North American cities.
Really? Okay.
So like strangely, it's like, I'd be in classes where it was like 70% Chinese. So
Oh
it's
wow.
like strangely, it wasn't like I mean, you'd feel like a minority at
Yeah.
times, but it's like, a lot of times I didn't. And it wasn't until, to be honest, like I like entered, the workplace, like out of my job, where I realized that like, oh, like people do get treated differently based on how they look. And it's not just performance based. Like two people could have the same performance, but they're being looked at differently. And I think there's been a lot of challenges in like the sports media industry. Like Will and I try to talk about it as much as we can, and like we've done kind of these panels. We did one at U of T recently, just sharing some of our challenges about being in the sports media space as like two Chinese guys. And but a lot more of those conversations take place kind of privately within like the people that we know in our inner circle and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and also like changes that we want to like impress on. A lot of times I think it's easy to just be like the loudest voice publicly and stuff. And certainly I went through a phase of that too, where it's just like I was very angry. I used to call out a lot of stuff, but now I find more power in having those conversations privately to figure out how we can actually affect those changes. So whether it's talking to like organizations, outlets, sports teams that we cover and work with, to give them a heads up on stuff, or whether it's like younger writers reaching out, people of color, minorities, and sharing our experiences with them, and hopefully connecting them with the right people. I think a lot of those conversations are sometimes more impactful than like calling somebody out publicly.
Yeah.
Certainly I'm not above that. So like, be careful. I am still a firecracker. But
Messiah. Okay.
yeah, Messiah, man, right? Let's work on this book together. But it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like there's the challenges still all exist. The challenges still all exist in terms of just being welcomed into certain spaces, being looked at, in the same way as others. All I've ever asked, I guess, in my career in my life is to be like judged the same way as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we're afforded that a lot of times. So it's like, but thankfully it's like with the careers that like I've been able to build out, Will and so many other people, it's like I feel like we're in a position now to kind of speak on these things and be able to kind of affect change and point out blind spots to people.
How much do you think the impact will be of you guys having the first nationally syndicated, I guess radio, now it's TV, it's on TV as well with the Raptors show, and just seeing two Chinese um guys on the TV all the time? Like how much impact do you think will have for like the next generation of people of color from any backgrounds?
Yeah, for sure, man. I feel the impact already based on just like people that I'll run into in the city, people run into at events, that Will and I organize, or like the book events at U of T. um I remember yesterday I was at the Muslim women's basketball,
Yeah.
league all-star game at MLSC Launchpad, and then I was walking home after, and I just ran into a listener that I never seen before who like recognized me, and she was just like, man, and she was Chinese, and she was like, man, I love what you guys are doing, like keep doing that. Sometimes it doesn't have to be anything deeper than that. Certainly
Mhm.
we've had one-on-one interactions where people are like, yeah, I want to pick your brain, want to learn more about the industry. Seeing what you guys are doing really kind of changes it. And it's like sometimes I like to expand beyond the scope of just like, what it does for like our community in terms of like the Chinese community. I think the show has been the pride of like just kind of the immigrant community here
Mhm.
in Toronto. People really enjoy when we share some of our experiences kind of growing up, or our favorite places in Toronto, or like the relationships that we have with our parents, because like a lot of that stuff is universal and sometimes not just applicable to like our culture. So like it's been super cool. So I think whatever that impact that we can leave is great. I've always wanted to leave an open door for people that want to reach out, who want to get in this industry. And it's been great to meet a lot of those people, and some of whom like I've watched go on now to like work at like full-time positions in like the sports media industry and stuff. So it's always just kind of leaving that door open and hoping that you can kind of leave an impact, because like there's honestly like, what's the point of doing this, aside from making a lot of money, and selling out to the concept of capitalism.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's number one for me, but number two is Number two is kind of leaving those like personal kind of imprints on people.
Yeah, first make money and then help people. I think, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly it. That's
First
you
comes the money, then the power, then the respect, man. Shout out to the Locks.
um, I wanted to ask a little bit about basketball. I know you don't watch a lot, Alex, but
Wow, wow, you don't even air me out like this. What the
no,
hell?
no.
Yeah.
Just what have you made of just the Raptors start to the season? Obviously, just do you just watch like Scotty Barnes clips? Is that how you watch the Raptors? I don't know, Alex, but
No comment. From what I've gathered on just clips on Twitter, I think everything about the Raptors this season has felt it's just felt like kind of a breath of fresh air. I think, some of that is attributed to some of the roster changes and obviously bringing in a new coach and like turning a new leaf. But I think Darko early on has done a really good job in terms of just like kind of galvanizing and bringing the team together. And it seemed like,
mhm,
coming off last season, whenever you hire a new coach, you want them to have the qualities that maybe you felt like was missing from the previous coach. And I think, Nick was a great coach, championship coach. There's a lot, not a lot of people have his resume, first 5 years as an NBA head coach, but it just felt like towards the end, maybe there was a disconnect with the players. Maybe he wasn't the right coach to usher in kind of a rebuild slash retool and connect with some of the younger players like Scotty and other guys on the team. So it seemed like Darko was brought in with those objectives. And it seems like, especially very early on, and again, we're judging by like open gym clips and like what we're seeing, but it's like, I think you're seeing it on the court too. You're seeing the way that they come together after victories. Um, and I kind of look at their losses too, like what they've lost twice to Philadelphia, once to Boston. Like those are not like terrible losses. Those are probably two of the
no.
best teams in the whole NBA right now. Definitely the top two teams in the East. You're not really going to beat them, to be honest. Like, Raptors is just not on that level. But then you look at the way they competed against Dallas, they competed against San Antonio. Nice win over Milwaukee. Although I'm kind of downgrading that because I don't think
Yeah,
Milwaukee's that good.
they've been bad.
But like I think you're seeing this team kind of come together, and they're obviously still figuring some stuff out on the court. Scotty's been incredible. I think Dennis not being talked about enough. I think Dennis has been incredible. Pascal's been figuring out outside of his breakout game against Dallas. You still see the flaws with the teams, like see them when they got blown out against Boston on the weekend. If they don't make threes, like they can't win. They can't keep up with some of these teams with the offensive firepower, like the Celtics. So like the offense is still a slog at times, but I think the optimism for me comes from knowing that the Raptors, it feels like they're building towards something this year, and it never felt
Mhm.
like that last season.
Is it just purely the Raptors show bump with Dennis Schroder? Is that the key to their early season vibes?
Yeah, I said this last week on the show. Is like I think I want to extend an open invite to every Raptors player to make a weekly appearance on the show. I think aside from getting the bump on the court, like I think it really does, players who come on our show, especially Dennis, like making this commitment to come on weekly, like it really does open them up in terms of like getting the fan base to really know them.
Yeah,
Because Dennis is not only providing us with great like behind the scenes insight, but it's also like, yeah, like we get to see his personality and then what that's all about. And I think a lot of players are striving for that today, in this kind of social media age. So yeah, Otto Porter, let's do it. Garrett Temple, let's do
it's
it.
Masai.
Um,
Let's do it.
yeah, Masai, let's do it. There's not a lot of money to be made from being on the Raptor show, but let's do it anyways. Masai, stop being such a capitalist, okay?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But with that, like, do you like how did that come about? Because I know I actually had Will on last week and he talked a little bit about how he got Dennis on the show kind of via being in Vegas with the team during summer league. But I know you're a producer of the show. Just what's the behind the scenes about it? I know you talked a little bit about getting Dennis on, I think on the Banter podcast, but just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Damn, yeah, Will on last week, man. I'm second agent again. Yeah, I can't, to be honest, I'll share some behind the scenes, but I can't take any credit for it. Obviously that was a Dennis had kind of approached, Will and Dennis had talked, did an interview in Summer League, and I think Will had talked a little bit to Dennis about just like the podcast that we do, the show that we do, and it seemed like he had an interest. Obviously, he's a content creator, got his own YouTube channel and everything. So then they had actually reached out to Sportsnet, and like, the two of them, the two of those parties had a conversation to kind of figure out the logistics of it. But like, yeah, as a producer behind the scenes, I work with Dennis's representatives each week. We figure out a time, we, provide them with the topics beforehand. And just kind of, I just kind of manage the kind of weekly kind of scheduling of it. And with athletes too, like I've joked about this to like Dennis's reps, like they're the hardest people to like track down. Like last week, they were coming off the win in San Antonio, they're practicing in Dallas, and the night before I was like, he was supposed to come on the Tuesday, and the night before I was like reminding his reps, I was like, hey, listen, man, he's in a different time zone, so like even though he says he's coming on, like please let him know that it's 2:30 Eastern or 3:30 Eastern, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
and like
And of
12
course,
p.m.
on the day of, like we're messaging on the show, and they're like, "Oh, damn! I think Dennis turned his phone off because he forgot he like got the time zones mixed up." So I was like, "Damn it!" But it's like you work around that stuff, and like they've been great to work with. Dennis has obviously been great. Like he like hopped on the team bus, last week and joined us. So yeah, it's been super fun.
Yeah. Well, what goes behind the scenes, not just with athletes, but like as a producer, like how do you navigate getting guests? Like how much like forward thinking is it? Like, are you Alex right now being like, oh, I know my December 15th to 20th week, I have Howard Beck, Windhorse, Zach. I'm just making people up, but just how does that like what's that process like for you, Alex?
Yeah, chill. December, man. I didn't even thought about that yet. But like, no, I usually think about 2 weeks ahead. So
Okay.
like we're speaking on a Monday right now. I already have the entire week basically tentatively mapped out and planned out, reached out to all the guests, know exactly what we're gonna
Spoiler
do.
alert.
Damn, actually, when's this coming out?
Tomorrow.
Okay. We might have a monster guest on Thursday, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Good to
he has
know.
a bald dome and he runs the league. So
I don't know who that
so
is.
Yeah, so
Michael Jordan?
he's he runs the entire league. So yeah, I usually plan out about 2 weeks in advance. And like there are people behind the scenes that support me as well. Like it's not something that
Yes.
I do just myself. So like, part of my job each day is to think about how we want to approach the show. So like in terms of carving out the show into the four different segments, so we have a rundown that we are, Will, Blake, people behind the scenes were all in, and I usually prep that, and they'll know the night before what the show's looking like. Now I leave a lot of room for Will and Blake to kind of do what they want, but it's like if you want to think about today, so we're coming off the Celtics game on the Saturday. Segment one, we're doing Raptors Celtics. We're going to do a recap. I'll pop in a bunch of topics that I want to tackle from the game. Will and
Hmm.
Blake will put in their notes or think about where they want to go. I'll try to do like some like kind of weird stuff. Like, I was thinking watching the game, I was like, have the Celtics always had like at least one white guy come off the bench for them in their career? So I was on Basketball Reference last night, going back 20 years, tracking the bench. So I did find out they've always had a white dude, at least for two
Like
decades.
Indiana.
So I'll
Yeah.
be sharing that research today on the show. So it's like kind of just thinking about like how the show will run, but also like putting in some of that creativity or
Yeah.
like putting in like different tangents and stuff because I know Will and Blake are always gonna talk about the game, but it's like, oh, what else can we talk about, what else can we throw in there? It's like I think I was obsessed with like Furkan Korkmaz like last week or something
Trade
like that, so we
request.
started yeah so
Oh
we
no.
started doing so it's doing started just like doing a lot of Furkan stuff. So like yeah, it's like each day is like creating those segments. Like segment two, like Action Bronson was on Pablo Torre's pod and like he read out one
Hmm.
of Will's tweets, so I prepped a whole segment about that. Like I spent all yesterday revisiting my favorite Action Bronson songs, writing down some lyrics. So it's like, you try to make it fun too, right? And
Yeah.
then we have James Herbert coming on in the second hour
Hmm.
from CBS Sports. And like, because the
Yeah.
Raptors are playing the Wizards tonight, we're going to draft all time like bonehead Wizards moments. So it's like these ideas get like generated and thought about like maybe like a week, like 2 weeks in advance. Because
Wow.
you look at the schedule and you're like, okay, they're playing the Wizards today. We need to line that up. And then it's like different components. It's like each week we know that, the Raptors have a busy week this week. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we
Hmm.
know that on Tuesday we're going to recap a game. On Thursday we're going to recap a game, and then we know that at some point we got to slot Dennis in, and then I have people behind the scenes that help me book track down a lot of these like national writers.
Yeah.
So like you talk about the Howard Becks, Dan Devine's joining us this week.
Cool.
So then it's just basically like different components.
Mm,
And then Blake will want to cover the 905, so then we'll have some 905 stuff that's happening. So it's like thinking each day like how it's gonna line up. So like right now, I'm already thinking about like next week. So like what
mm,
next week's schedule, like who they're playing, who should we bring in? Like I'll probably have like Joseph Cacharo and Joe Wolfon from the Score because they join us like once a month. So it's like, oh, let's get that worked in. So it's thinking about like making sure we have a good composition of guests,
mhm.
both from a quality standpoint. We're always striving to have men, women, people of color, like a different mix,
Yeah.
as well. So it's like, yeah, so it's like a lot of day-to-day planning in terms of like taking the creative lead on the show. And then a lot of it is just thinking like a week, 2 weeks ahead. Cause like when you produce a show like this, you can't just think about it the day of, and you
No.
just can't think about the next show because people are consuming 5 shows a week. You have to think about the composition of those 5 shows together.
Yeah, no, of course. And so who's your favorite guest ever to be on the Raptors?
Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Okay.
I usually don't ask people that come in studio for like photos with them, but Keith I had to. We took a photo together that I cherish. I look at in like my little photo frame like I'm Wolverine all the time, and I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
But guys like Keith I think I find very interesting because I think and this is not a knock against anybody locally,
Yeah.
but I think like when you're in the Raptor space, you're familiar with a lot of the local voices. And not to say that they're not good, but it's like what our show I think is able to do, especially for the local basketball audience, is like introduce them to people from like other markets.
Hmm.
Um, and I find like people from other markets sometimes are able to speak more openly, and they're also way more knowledgeable about these other teams that we always talk about. So like Keith has always been just a great personality, and someone who speaks very smartly and critically about the Sixers. So yeah, off the top of my head, that's what I would say. I know people really like Gary Trent Sr. Like he hasn't responded to my text this year, but we're gonna make that happen because anytime he's in town, he's just like want to go to the studio. And like he'll message me this at like 10 in the evening, and I'm like, right now? You mean like tomorrow? So like we'll figure that stuff out. So like Gary loves being on TV. So like stuff, yeah, people like that. I think just like unique personalities that we're able to put in. But even like I mentioned, like the Joe Cash, Joe Wolfon, like I really enjoyed them talking about basketball with Will as well. So like
Hmm.
that it's honestly a really long list of people that I would consider like my favorites.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I won't keep you too long, but I have some kind of fun questions for you. And the first one, and I feel like I know what the answer is, but I'm gonna still ask it. Who is your NBA player comparison, past or present?
My NBA player comparison.
Yes. I hear you're a good defender.
Yeah. So I've been compared to like kind of PJ Tucker, what he is right now.
Is that because you
Maybe
have a lot of shoes?
yeah, I mean a lot of shoes. Plus, like I'm actually a sick defensive player. Like I lock in. So I will lock down like your best player. And then Will can attest to that. I talked about like basketball helping me to make friends growing up. Like I made the grade 7, grade 8 team. I played in high school as well early
Nice.
on. And like back then, I was I still am. I'm like a Dennis Rodman type in terms of being like a very fierce like rebounder. I basically do all the dirty work.
Okay.
But back then I had a sick 3-point shot too. The thing now with me is like I don't have a shot now. So like
Huh.
that's why I compare myself to Draymond a little bit too. But like
When was your 15-16 season?
yeah, that was probably like in grade 9. Yeah, grade
Okay.
9, grade 10. Down to like there was one time I think we had a tournament in like King City, like super excited. My parents drove out there. They were watching, and I hit a three to open a game, but I like held my follow through for too long because I was like feeling myself. And
Yes.
like I celebrated. I want to say I like blew kisses at my parents. Like I was crazy back then. And then it's like and then my coach benched me for like I think either the first half or the rest of the game.
Did
So
you
then
kick someone in the nuts?
no, my parents were so mad at that. And then I guess my other comp is Kareem as well, because I have this like crazy hook in the low post because I'm
Okay.
a lefty that people can't block. So yeah,
Oh,
basically I've just described myself as a combination of Kareem, Draymond, and PJ Tucker and Dennis Rodman. That's an
you know,
insane player.
you're pretty modest. I think that's the what I'm really getting right now from you,
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah,
Is
real humble, real
real
humble.
humble.
But
Who's
currently have plantar fasciitis, self-diagnosed. So I've been off the court for a
okay?
few weeks. But like come on November 25th to TMU sportversusmedia.com.
I saw that.
There's a TMU athletes versus media game. So we're gonna be there raising money for MLSE Foundation. So Will and I will be there playing.
Awesome. Who's the best player out of the three of you, including Blake? Will you?
Mm, I think we all kind of suck overall, but like I think we all have our own good qualities. I've actually never really watched Blake play that much.
Yeah.
Feel like he's just like a smart, cerebral type player. Will is he's always a minus like 8 when he plays in a game up to
With
11
Dermot.
because like yeah, like he'll get shots off, but then he'll also just like not run back on defense and stuff. And then he'll also foul you all the time. I'm a strong plus minus player, but it's like I don't really fill up the stat sheet.
Hmm.
Also, like stamina might be a problem. I got injuries now and stuff. So it's hard to say. I think all three of us just suck.
Okay, okay. I'll take you just as the feisty guy. We need a guy who can play like Dennis Rodman, Kareem.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very competitive. Like
Okay.
maybe not in all things, but like I feel like I take pickup basketball like very seriously. I
Seriously.
just feel like
A lot of
you
hard
can't go
fouls.
on you can't go on the court and just half-ass it. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna play, you gotta play for real.
Yeah, not like Will. Yeah, just don't be Will. That's
Will's very serious too, but he's just yeah, he tackles people.
okay. That's FIBA style. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if the big bald man resigned tomorrow and you were the commissioner for a day, what would your first decree be, Alex?
I would start the season on Christmas. I would change the regular season to 50 games. I would create some kind of tournament at the end of the season for tanking teams that miss the playoffs actually have to play in a tournament to earn their draft seeding. And that's about it. I would go back to all 90s uniforms.
Okay.
I would cancel the in-season tournament.
Is that
And
because
then I
of
would,
is that because of Heat Culture's court? Is it
yeah, heat
you're-
culture, and I saw the Bulls court. It just looked like blood. And then I would also change the first round to back to a best of five.
Ooh.
Because I find the first round to be really boring. In terms of a best of seven, like you rarely get like these like really thrilling upsets. Like there are still upsets, but it's like there's nothing
Hey,
like a one seed losing game one at home and suddenly they've lost home court advantage and they're in a best of five.
yeah. Yeah, Raptors Pacers 2016. Whoa, what a series. I missed that kind of
Oh
first
man.
round.
Yeah, that and then the Raptors Heat, like that was insane. That was the worst run to the conference finals ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And DeMar got paid, so we're all happy. But okay, and then who is your I normally ask about Canada basketball, but I'm gonna ask what's your all-time starting five for the Raptors?
All-time starting five for the Raptors. So we're gonna start Carlos Arroyo at point guard. Gonna go Mike James at shooting guard. Matt Thomas at small forward. Gonna go Jelani McCoy
Oh
at
my.
power forward, and then I'm gonna go with Yogi Stewart at center. So that's
Does
my
that
starting five.
does that team win more than 3 games in an 82 game season?
I think it gets to 22 wins, yeah, and then we lose the draft lottery.
Okay, okay, to the Celtics.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time, Alex. This was a lot of fun. Just again, just gonna give you the floor to plug your book that I have with me that people can maybe see on the
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, appreciate that. Prehistoric. It's in stores now. Like I mentioned, when this pod comes out, we're sorting through kind of restocking the book online if you want to add it to your wish list for Christmas. or just follow me on Twitter, Steven_LeBron, or IG Steven LeBron. I'll post updates. And then they're available still if you look up on Indigo, kind of your nearest stores. But yeah, it's I think, like I said earlier, like it's not just a book for like diehard Raptors fans. Like it's definitely a book for diehard Raptors fans, but it's like if you want to learn about a piece of like Toronto history, if you want to learn about what it's like to start an expansion franchise in Canada, if you want to learn about the personal stories of the players, the front office, the different departments, and the people around the city who like love basketball and came together to make this happen. I think this is a book written from like a sports/culture perspective
Mhm.
that is easy and accessible to everybody. So like, yeah, hope everybody can get a chance to check it out.
Well, I read the book. I finished it. I absolutely loved it. I thought the Isaiah Thomas and the ownership kind of story was really cool. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time, and everyone should read Prehistoric. So thanks so much, Alex.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It was great chatting with you.
If you like this, please like, subscribe, rate, and review. And yeah, thanks so much for all the support.